Just a quick disclaimer before the video begins. This video will discuss animal mortality as well as having images of animals in malnutrition state. If you don't want to see or hear any of that, I suggest you do not listen to this video at this time. For years, I've been obsessed with orcas. Like most kids, it started with Free Willy, the story of a kid that was my age befriending a whale. Who wouldn't be obsessed? And as a girl who was already in love with the ocean, the series really was my bread and butter. As I grew up, I started learning more about these animals, how they lived in the ocean, and how they lived in aquariums. In high school is when I really went down the rabbit hole, and it eventually leaded us here. The Kilroy armor wasn't always meant to be tied to conservation. In the first concepts, the suit was just armor with a paint job that resembled an orca. As the years went on, though, I became more engrossed in the story of America's orcas, the Southern Resident Killer whales to be more specific. This led to the armor becoming something more. I decided to center it around conservation and to memorialize the orcas that had brought me to where I was. In this video, I'm going to share with you the orcas in the armor, their stories, and more. And while this video is not sponsored, I'd like to give a shout out to orcamonth.com. I'll share more about them at the end of the video. The first orca is Kilroy. He is the namesake and really the blueprint for this suit. He was one of the first orcas that I learned about in a historical sense, as he is the 7th orca on record to be captured for captivity. This was back in 1967, during the infancy of cetaceans being captured, and for oceanariums in general. Oceanariums were like aquariums, but elevated. Sure, your local aquarium would have sharks, maybe even a turtle, but the oceanarium would not only have seals and dolphins, but whales. With some oceanariums being so close to Hollywood, they became hot spots for filmmakers to come and get B-roll for some of their movies. I was also drawn to Kilroy because of his name. For those who aren't aware, Kilroy was a popular meme in World War II. And if you go to the World War II Memorial in Washington, D.C., you can see Kilroy is here on the side. And I just think it was pretty neat. Another reason why Kilroy is so special to me is because he is one of a handful of orcas that stayed at SeaWorld, Ohio. Not a lot of people know that SeaWorld had an Ohio park, and it was actually the second park to be built. His service number is a reference to his capture date, which was February of 1967. Most of the orcas captured in the 60s and 70s came from the waters of Washington, which was the southern resident population, and Kilroy was actually a part of K-Pod, and he was less than a year old at his capture. Unsurprisingly, because Kilroy was an early capture, he did not survive that long. He only lived until 1978. He was 12 years old. Nami was another orca that I had learned about when I was in high school. She was from the Taiji Whaling Museum. Well, I say from, she was captured from the waters of Taiji in what is called the Taiji Drive Hunt. This drive hunt still happens to this day, and has been happening since the 60s and earlier, but it mostly ramped up because of the dolphin captivity industry. I learned about Taiji from a documentary called The Cove, and I do suggest that if you want to learn more about this, that you really should watch that documentary. This is why she represents my eyes, because we do have to recognize that awful things like this still happen. I do not in any way support capture of any kind. I only want the existing population to have whatever dignified care they can have for the rest of their lives, to have good welfare. Nami wasn't the only orca to be captured in Taiji. The most infamous was the Taiji 5, where 5 orcas were taken in, including a pregnant female. I don't know why Nami means so much to me. Maybe it's because she stayed at the Whaling Museum for such a long time, alone, or because of how recently she had died by the time I'd gotten into orcas. She passed away in 2011 from swallowing stones while staying in Taiji. She had lived alone for the majority of her life because of how aggressive she was with other orcas and with her trainers, and she was about 29 at the time of her passing. My saddle patch is in memory of Cappuccino. Cappuccino was, unlike the other 2 orcas, a wild killer whale, and he lived in the waters of Washington. He's mostly known as K21, and he was a very large male. I didn't really know much about Cappuccino until 2021, and it wasn't for a good reason. I had seen other wild killer whales before make the news. One of them was Scarlet, the happiest baby whale ever, and it was when she became sick and subsequently passed away. What I'm about to show you are the last photos ever taken of Cappuccino, and they are not for the faint of heart. As you can see by these photos, this is very obviously an orca, but something is wrong. You can see there's a big dent behind his blowhole, and his dorsal fin is completely missing. There is no nub, there is no sign of scar tissue, and as you can see by this photo, it is clear as what has happened, and his dorsal fin has fully collapsed. With most orcas that you see in captivity, they still have a good bump where their dorsal fin curls, and it is very, very rare to see a full collapse, and it is only seen in fully malnutritioned orcas, such as Cappuccino, in the last days of his life. Because he was a wild orca, nobody was really sure how he had gotten this sick, but like with most orcas in the Southern Resident community, it mostly tied back to a lack of food. And to see what was once a massive healthy orca at such a pitiful state is really what made me change my mind about this armor. This is what made me think, maybe I should be doing more than just slapping a paint job on armor and calling it a day. What more can I do to try and spread the word, to try and get people to care more about these animals? And we know what the problem is for the salmon. We have known since the beginning what had been the problem, and it is the lower Snake River dams. Since before they were built, not only scientists, fishermen, but the tribes of the Pacific Northwest said that these dams would cause irreversible damage to the salmon runs and would inevitably cause their decline, and in part throw the ecosystem of Washington, of the Pacific Northwest, into a severe imbalance that we are seeing today. Since 1984, the salmon population has been down 60%. 60%. And it is only getting worse. And the lack of salmon is not only affecting the large adult orcas, but it is affecting the babies. If mothers cannot have enough nutrition to feed themselves, they cannot pass that nutrition down to their calves. The gauntlet on my arm has tally marks on it. And I always get asked, like, what are the tally marks? Is that your kill count? And I get to explain that no, this actually represents the entire population of the southern resident killer whales. And unfortunately, the red tally marks represent the orcas that have passed since this armor started. It didn't take long for the first calves to subsequently be born and then pass away after I debuted this armor. And one was pretty traumatic. L128 was born in September of 2024 to his mom, who was a notable first-time mother. She had never had a successful pregnancy, and as far as researchers knew, she had never had a calf before. So this was very exciting for everyone to see. It wasn't a month later until researchers noticed a decline in the calf. Another orca, Moonlight, L83, was helping look after the calf while Mom was foraging for food, and this is a very common instance. But what wasn't common was seeing Moonlight try to revive a very limp L128. He was draped across her nose, her rostrum, and it looked like the calf was not there. He'd stopped breathing, and there was a point where she brought him up to the boat. And one of the researchers said, it was like she was begging for them to try and help this little calf, because she knew that they were there to help or do something. L128 was not the only calf. Later that year, another notable orca calf would be lost, and that was J61. J61 was notable because his mom was Tahlequah. And if you've heard that name before, it's from 2018 when she carried her dead calf for 17 days. This is not seen ever in orcas except for her, and that one time was not the only, because when J61 passed away, she did it again. What was really scary about this time is there was concern that she would not survive. She wasn't eating as far as anyone could see, and she, like the last tour of grief, was just focusing on keeping this calf up and trying to mourn as best as she could. She carried the calf for about 2 weeks. It's not entirely known because her family went out to sea, and she along with them, and when they came back, she no longer had the calf. The other orcas that have passed away since the concept of this armor is K34, Callie, L85, Mystery, K26, Lobo, and Calf J60, along with L128 and J61. How anyone in power can see these iconic animals, especially to their state, suffering because of a lack of food, and just do nothing is beyond me. The main thing we can do is breach the lower Snake River dams. They need to go. In order for the salmon to spawn, and for the runs to improve back to the way that they were in the 80s, is for those dams to be knocked down. And the thing is, we've seen this very successfully happen within the last year. The Klamath River got rid of their dams, and the day, within 24 hours of the river being freed, salmon started shooting past where that dam used to be. They thought it would take a week. It took less than 24 hours for the salmon to come back and start going up the river and doing what they had been doing for hundreds of years. So this isn't a fairy tale. This is scientifically proven within the last year that this is something that we can do, and that the salmon will come back and they will spawn, as they've done since before the dams have been there. This is not an overnight thing. We can't just put some dynamite on the dams and hope everything turns out alright. This takes years to plan, so we need to start now. For those who don't know, the Lower Snake River dams are mostly a lock system that allows cargo ships to go up the river into Iowa. Cargo ships upriver into Iowa. I don't think that's necessary. And honestly, it's pretty redundant since there's a railroad running right along the river. So you could not only save money by not using a massive lock system, but there's already something else in place to do the same job that giant boats do. Probably at a quicker level too. But I'm no expert. I'm just somebody who sees a solution and who sees people closer to the problem that are doing fundamentally nothing. And it's not just about the orcas. The building of these dams went against the treaties with the tribes of the Pacific Northwest. And I can't speak on that because I don't know as much about that than I do about orcas. We have hope that we can save these animals and bring the salmon back, as we did with the Klamath River. But time is running out. If there is no fish, there is no blackfish. And every year we have less calves being born, and of the ones that are born, more are dying. So we can't afford to keep waiting and hoping that someone will do something. We need somebody to do something. So how can you help? I mean, how can I help? I'm somebody in Ohio. I can't go to a rally in Washington. There are some good resources online. One that I use is cetaceans.org. And if you follow the link, cetaceans.org/Save the Southern Residents, all one word, you can find resources such as pre-written letters to write Washington senators, the USA Corps of Engineers, the Northwest Division. They're the reason why we have the dams, and also your general representatives. Though in this time it does not feel like they will do much, having your voice saying something is better than just giving up. In addition to these letters, there are also petitions that you can sign. And if you really want to, you can also support conservation groups that not only monitor the southern resident killer whale population, but also work towards salmon habitat reconstruction. I personally follow and support the Center for Whale Research, the Whale Museum, the Orca Conservancy, and Orca Month. Orca Awareness Month was started by the Orca Network, and it was created to bring together researchers, advocates, and orca lovers everywhere to raise awareness about the threats facing these animals. There's not only in-person events in Washington and Oregon, but there's also a few webinars being held online for those who can't attend the events in person. And just like the saying, no fish, no blackfish, the month is also spent spreading awareness about salmon, their habitat, and the reconstruction we can do if we take down the dams and do other amazing work to keep our waters clean. It seems every month I'm learning more and more about these animals and the community around them, and it just makes me wish that I could be there. Thank you again for listening to this video, and if you do want to help, please do consider supporting a conservation group or writing the Washington senators. Hopefully, I really do hope that those dams will come down, or we will somehow see this population bounce back. But we are running on borrowed time, and I really would appreciate it if you would take the extra steps and doing your part, as cheesy as that is. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go cry.